What is up, guys? Welcome back to the channel. If you're not subscribed, go ahead and click that subscribe button down below for more content just like this. You keep coming back, you might as well get notified of when it comes out. Today we're going to talk about a topic that frustrates the heck out of me on social media. I see posts from people all the time talking about their training, they're doing this exercise, they're doing that exercise, and they keep talking about how what they're doing is training. But what they're doing isn't training, it's exercising. And there's a huge difference between the two, and we're going to go over that difference so you have a really good understanding of it. So let's start with the definition of training, or just kind of an explanation of what training really is. So the process behind training is you pick an adaptation that you want to build towards. So let's say we want more maximal strength in the pecs, right? That's an adaptation that we want to build. Then you pick an exercise and you pick a way to perform that exercise. So let's say for more maximal strength in the pecs, we pick a bench press, and then just picking bench press isn't enough. We have to pick a way to perform it. So let's say we've got a month-long program or so, increasing intensity while decreasing reps. Whole point is to take whatever our calculated 1 rep max is at the beginning of the training phase, and then do some calculations, determine, okay, I should be lifting this much weight this many times in this week, and do the same thing for the next week, and then in the last week, you go ahead and retest the max. That whole program, let's say we took the bench from 225 to 245 in about a month. That's great. We increased maximal strength in the pecs. Now let's keep that same goal, trying to build maximal strength in the pecs, and keep the same exercise. Let's use a bench press. But it would be inappropriate to do like 5 sets of 2 at a 0.9 to 1.0 meter per second with like a VBT unit on, because the adaptation you're going to get from performing that exercise in that way is going to be really rate of force development and elasticity. You're not going to be getting maximal strength from that. The whole point here is pick the adaptation, pick the exercise you want to perform to get that adaptation, and then pick the strategy that you're going to use that exercise in to get that adaptation. Now, I watch so many guys over and over and over again on social media picking some, so let's say, let's use bench press again for example. So let's say, they want to build, they don't even identify what adaptation they're chasing. They just like throw in a strength and conditioning program because I don't know. They don't have a reason. They just throw it in because they think they need to be lifting. So let's say, okay, they've identified they want to use the bench press. So we haven't identified an adaptation. We have identified an exercise. And then what's the strategy we're going to use? Well, I see a lot of strategies of people that just don't really do anything. And what I mean by that is to actually convince your body that you need to send more building blocks to whatever the individual structures are that you're training. The stimulus that you're applying has to be really strong. So for example, let's say you can bench 315 pounds. If you do a set of 5 on the bench press at 135 pounds, your body's not going to send any building blocks anywhere. There's no stimulus to train anything because your body can handle that stress so easy. Like it isn't, you aren't training anything, you aren't breaking anything down, you aren't sending any signals, you really aren't doing anything. All you're doing is exercising. The point of exercising is just to get moving, stay healthy, use different systems in your body. The point of training is to pick an adaptation that you really want, pick the exercise that you're going to use it, and a strategy with that exercise to then create that adaptation. There's a massive difference between the two. I see so many people who say, here's my set of bench press today. Here's some exercises for my training. And I watch them do the movement, and it's just nowhere near stressful enough to do anything. They're not building anything. They're exercising, they're moving around, that's great. But in terms of actual sports performance and getting out of their exercise and out of their training what they want to get out, they're not doing a single thing. They're not getting any better from doing their training. They aren't training at all. Now, I understand the reasoning why behind a lot of trainers like to keep the stresses in the weight room much lighter. There's a whole school of thought of, your best ability is availability, meaning like they don't want to get you hurt in the weight room. They want to make sure you can always be out on the field, things like that. I get that whole side of training. I totally get it. But if that's your goal, then be upfront with that with the athlete. And as the athlete, if that's your goal, be upfront with that in the information that you present. Because if you're training and in reality you're just exercising, you're not training. Stop telling everybody you're training. Also, if you're the person writing the program for the athlete, they're not training. You know they're not training. They're not building any adaptations. Tell them that. Tell them that that's your strategy, is to keep them healthy. We're not really pushing any sort of adaptation. We're not pushing maximal capability or whatever your adaptations build up towards. All you're doing is just kind of moving around, staying healthy in the weight room, and really not trying to push anything. And I get it. Higher stresses in anything means more potential risk for injury. I totally get it. But in my opinion, if those stresses are managed correctly in a program where you start from wherever you are, we build you up to where you need to be able to handle those stresses, and then we apply those stresses, I've had a lot of success with keeping guys healthy in those situations. Now, obviously, mistakes happen. Mistakes happen in everything. Accidents happen. Accidents happen in everything. Sometimes guys get hurt. But the same thing happens in programs that all you're doing is exercising. Mistakes happen, accidents happen, things like that happen. So I totally understand why they want to keep stresses low, but it isn't actually doing anything for the athlete. Also, as a really important reminder, if you keep stresses low in the weight room, in your off season, and not just in the weight room, but in your off season training before you go in season, there's a very large potential that you are detraining yourself and setting yourself up for an injury in the season. So I've done a video on this before that stresses good in training. Go ahead and click that link and check it out. So the whole point here, guys, if you're trying to train something in your body with your program, if you actually call it a training program and not an exercise program, you need to establish what adaptation you want to get. Then go, okay, what exercise am I going to use to get that adaptation? And then how am I going to perform that exercise? What strategy am I going to use to get that adaptation? If you aren't doing that, if you aren't applying stresses that are high enough, obviously you need to go from wherever you're at to where you need to be to handle those stresses first. But once you get to that point, if you aren't applying stresses that are high enough, you're not actually training anything. Your body's not going to adapt to anything because the stress and the stimuli is not strong enough to produce an adaptation at all. So I hope you enjoyed the video. If you're somebody who that's your training program, is really just an exercise program, and you're tired of it, leave me a comment. Let's talk, man. I'd love to hear your story. But go ahead and subscribe to the channel. We got content like this coming out all the time, guys. Hope you learned something. Thanks for stopping by.